Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a review of the Canon 100 to 300 millimeter f2.8 RF. That's right, this is a lens built from the ground up for mirrorless Canon cameras. Now, it was super unexpected when this got announced because we didn't even know it was coming. We didn't get briefed until it got announced. And then I was like, I need to get one of these in my hands so I can take it out into the real world and see how it works. And at 11:22 a.m. on a Saturday, the lens showed up. I then took it to photograph my nephew at 12:50 playing baseball, took it to the Philadelphia Phillies for a 3:05 game, and then at night at 7:30 went out to the Philadelphia Union game, which is a soccer game, and it was absolutely deluging for 3 hours. We're talking full downpour, and that's where I used this lens. Now, being that I did this all myself in one day, I didn't end up recording the EVF of the Canon R3, which is the camera that I used here because, one, in the pouring rain, I can't have an EVF recorder up top, and basically when I'm shooting the baseball, I wanted to focus on getting the best shots possible. So you're not gonna see a lot of on-location stuff, but yes, there's a picture of me at the Phillies game that the Phillies photographer took. That's me shooting with the 100 to 300 millimeter 2.8, and now let's get into the outside of the lens. So here it is in all of its glory, 100 to 300 2.8. Does it feel good in the hands? The answer is yeah. You know what? I expected this to be a heavier lens because Sigma made a 120 to 300 2.8 back in the day, and then Nikon a couple years ago put out the 120 to 300 2.8 F mount, which wasn't for the Z mount, even though Z mount cameras were already prevalent in the world. And here we have a Canon 100 to 300 2.8 that is a ton lighter than the Nikon version. Let me give you the specs. This one weighs in at 5.7 pounds or 2,590 grams versus the old 300 2.8 that Canon had, which is 5.29 pounds or 2,400 grams. Now, on the Nikon front, their lens weighed in at 7.15 pounds or 3,250 grams. So yes, it was a much heavier lens to hold when you got Nikon's version, and this one goes even wider, because it goes to 11.
These go to 11.
Oh,
11,
and most of
11,
the
and then
amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
No, it goes 100 to 300, not 120 to 300. Now, I just mentioned the Canon 300 2.8. They did not make an RF version of the 300 2.8, and I think at this point it's safe to say that they're not gonna have a 300 2.8 prime lens because they came out with the zoom version right here. So the big question is, do you hand hold this when you shoot, or do you end up using a monopod? And the truth of the matter is, you can absolutely hand hold this for a short amount of time if you've got guns like this and guns like this. Hold on, let me do this. There you go. Now you can absolutely see it when I pull my shirt up. Look, which way to the beach, everybody? That way. You can hand hold it. I did do that when I photographed pickleball and when I photographed my nephew because I knew I wasn't going to be using it too long. But when I shot baseball, I absolutely used the monopod, and when I shot the soccer, the monopod was necessary because it's a couple hours of shooting. Now, here's the zoom range. I'll just show it to you. You've got 100 to 300. It's a little bit of a throw, but when I was shooting on a monopod, I had my hand up here and I was just doing this, and it was very stable. But that's how I found was the best way to zoom. Just putting my hand up here, the top of everything was nice and balanced, and that's how I went from 100 to 300, and it worked really well. Now, if you're hand holding it, what I end up doing is I move this collar out of the way. By the way, you hear the clicks? That's right, it clicks into place, unlike Nikon. For whatever reason, Nikon does not have their big ass glass click into place. I like the fact that I know exactly what center is. So the reason I would flip this out of the way is because I want to hand hold the camera like this, and I want to just rotate my thumb and forefinger and go through the entire process of 100 to 300 just like this. So yes, it is fully capable of doing that. Now, if you want to take off this foot, you have to use the driver, the screwdrivers and everything that came with it, and can take this off. You could replace it with a smaller foot if you want to, or take the foot off altogether. But if you're gonna use a monopod, you're not gonna want to do that. Now, in terms of size, right? They say this is 12.7 inches. And I was like, that's a big 12.7 inches because I thought it was bigger when I took it out of the box. I know that's what she said, whatever. But here is your lens hood. You got a small lens hood. We're gonna put that off to the side right here to measure this because I have a tape measurer. Now, we don't wanna measure from the lens cap. We wanna measure from this rubber to the top. So let's pull out the tape measurer, put it right about here, because that's where it hooks in, that's where the glass is, and then you go right here and you can see it's just about 12.7 to the bottom of the cap right here. So it is actually 12.7 inches. And here, I always thought this was 12.7 inches, but I must have been wrong all along. So it's a nice size lens. I thought it was bigger. 12.7 inches isn't bad at all. It's a little longer, it's an inch longer than the 302.8, but that's not a big deal when you're using this on a monopod. Nobody cares, especially at the weight of this lens. All right, let's continue to the front element. Here you go. This was your lens cap. Usually on big ass glass, you don't have a squeezy lens cap on the front of it. This is 112 millimeters. You have 112 millimeter right here. You're not putting filters on this, but also there is no drop-in filter option. I've personally never used a circular polarizer in something like this in the back, but hey, it is one of those things. This one absolutely doesn't have it. I'm not sure why they decided to do that. You have your custom function ring right here. I always turn that off, but maybe some of the pros that are using this might find that useful. You've got buttons on 4 sides of the lens, as well as a button on the side back here. It's a custom function button that you could set. You have your manual focus ring right here. And then on the side, you have your switches for stabilization 1, 2, and 3. You have on and off for stabilization, your autofocus to manual. Right here, you have your focus limiter. And then the last one here is a preset as well as the recall. And this all changes based on the buttons that you have right here. The people that use that know how to use it. I personally don't go ahead and use those preset buttons myself because I've never found them to be useful. Let me jump in here because I want to show you this photo taken with the Canon 100-300 and edited with 14 presets from FroPak 3, starting with Zoolander, followed by Winnebago. We've got Walter White, Prestige Worldwide, November Rain, Mount Airy, Mentos, King Contrast, Gotham for People, Eckert, Capone, Canadian Tuxedo, Almost Famous, Fifth Element, and my all-time favorite from FroPak 1 is Skittles with one click, boom. The second one, let's show you Skittles again on this one. One click, FroPak 1 looks awesome. So look, if you're tired of presets not working, I just showed you 14 of them from FroPak 3 working. And FroPak 3 consists of 15 custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPak3. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. And if you decide to pick them up right now, they're currently on sale. Or if you want to save even more and get the triple play bundle that includes Skittles from FroPak 1, you can get all 3 of those and save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, one of the biggest questions that the pros had when I was showing them this lens is, can you use the teleconverters? Because the 70-200 2.8 RF from this upset a lot of people that you can't use the teleconverters. You cannot put a 1.4 or a 2x onto this, though I'm not a big fan of putting teleconverters on most things, especially something like this. But yes, you can put a teleconverter on this. So the 1.4 is going to give you a 140 to 420 millimeter zoom at f4. You put the 2x on there, you're gonna get 200 to 600 at 5.6. Now, one of my biggest complaints and questions about this lens is, why did it not have a 1.4 TC built in? We saw Nikon do this with the 400 2.8. We saw Nikon do it with the 600 f4. Why does this not have a TC built in? Did Canon not want to crush maybe the 400 2.8, even though there's a difference between 2.8 and f4? Did they not want to crush the future of a 200 to 400 or a 180 to 400 f4 that has a teleconverter built in? I'm not sure, but this might have been the ultimate lens if you throw a 1.4 converter in here. Yes, it might have added to the price and it might have added a little bit to the weight, but on the monopod it doesn't matter. But geez, to get 140 to 420 for a sporting event is pretty insane, even at f4, and even though I'm not a big teleconverter fan. Now mind you, I've got sample pictures to show you. There's going to be a slideshow of my favorite images at the end of the video so you can see what I was able to capture here, and I'm going to put some of them side by side so that you can see what 600 millimeters looks like versus 300 millimeters to help you decide, is it good enough? And is it right for you? So those are some of the questions we're going to be answering. Now, in terms of autofocus, you've got dual nano USM focusing. There's a USM motor as well as an STM motor. You barely know this thing is focusing. Even with the 1.4 or the 2x converter, you're not losing any speed. It's so fast on the Canon R3. It's going to be fast on the R5. It's going to be fast across the Canon lineup because they all share the same autofocusing system, and you're going to get super fast autofocus. I didn't miss stuff. Even when shooting in the pouring rain, I know this, that the Nikon Z9 shooters who were also there shooting said they were having some trouble with focus when it came to the rain because it would find raindrops instead of just finding the subject. I didn't have that issue when I shot the soccer game. It just found the subject even in that deluge and downpouring rain. I did not miss, which is fantastic when you're using any lens, and that's why I really love the focusing system, and the focus was fantastic. Now you do have image stabilization, 5.5 stops of image stabilization when you're using a camera that doesn't have any IBIS or if IBIS is off. Now with IBIS in combination with this, you get 6 stops of image stabilization. In terms of minimum focusing distance, you're at 5.9 feet. I don't know that in millimeters or centimeters or meters for you people right now, but it's up on the screen. You've got 9 aperture blades in a lens like this, and honestly that really shouldn't be a determining factor on whether you buy this lens or not, because you want a 100 to 300 2.8, you're going to buy this lens whether it has 8 blades, 11 blades, 27 blades or not, because you just want to get the shot. All right, let's jump into some of these pictures. Now, I remind you, I will have a slideshow that's going to show you a ton of the images so that you can see what I was able to capture. But having 100 to 300 at a baseball game is kind of questionable. Now, I sat in the Phillies media room before the game showing this to the newspaper shooters, the AP, the USA Today people, as well as the Phillies team photographer, and there was a hot debate going on, is this worth it in a place like baseball? Or they were trying to figure out where is it useful, because a 400 2.8 is a 2.8. Now, the part of the discussion is you have a 400 2.8 because it's long and it's 2.8 and it gives you just such an incredible look. But then you have the versatility of a 100 to 300. Is it too short for baseball at 300 millimeters? And the answer I thought was going to be, yeah, it's too short for baseball. But having the 100 to 300, say, pregame for an image like this of Castellanos, he went over to sign autographs for kids. And right here, I'm at 100 millimeters. So I'm able to be at 100 millimeters. If I had just a 300, I wouldn't have been able to get this shot because I would have been stuck in the photo well at third base, not able to get the angle that I wanted. But being that it's a 100 to 300, I could go out of 100, and then I could zoom in for a shot like this, which is 181 millimeters. Still, it's much easier to have this zoom range because you have that versatility and you have that 2.8 all the way through. Now, where it feels a little short is shortstop, no pun intended. We have Trey Turner right here, 300 millimeters. I'm all the way out at the end. So you're not exactly filling the frame fully, but a lot of sports shooters, what do, Steven? Crop. That's right, they crop. So it's not out of the question where the 300 gives you some range here, because what if Trey Turner is jumping, right? What if he jumps and I only had a 400? I might not get him in the frame, or with a 600. Here, you could zoom in, You could crop. That's what a lot of photographers are going to do in these situations. Now, keep in mind, if you're doing it on an R3, you only have 24 megapixels. But if you're doing it on an R5, you can chew up a lot more megapixels because that thing is 45 megapixels. So this is at 300 with Trey Turner, but I threw on the 2x converter to give you a look at what that would be at 600 millimeters. Yes, 200 to 600, 5.6. Is it usable? The answer is, of course it is. But as you zoom in just a little bit, if you zoom in, you're gonna start to notice you are just enlarging the grain and you are enlarging the pixels that maybe you might have been better off just cropping. But having 200 to 600 maybe makes this a really good option for those super wealthy people who want to photograph birds and wildlife, where they could spend $16,000 on a 600 f4. I didn't tell you the price of this yet, but I'm going to tell you right now, $9,500 plus $600 for a 2x converter. You're just over $10,000 and you're getting the zoom capability, 200 to 600, 5.6. And the great autofocus to go with it, especially if you're putting it on any of the Canon cameras, is gonna be a nice option for those super wealthy wildlife shooters. This might still work for someone like them, but you can do it. 200 to 600 is a nice range. Now, when I put the 1.4 converter on it for something like this photo of Trey Turner batting, I'm at 420 millimeters for a shot like this. Now, 420 millimeters is absolutely sweet for getting a player horizontally batting at a baseball park, at least in Citizens Bank Park where I shot. It's incredible for that. Now, I am going to f4 instead of staying at 2.8, but it lets you get in there closer. That's why I think this would have been an incredible lens if they were able to squeeze in a 1.4 converter in there for the times where you need it. But if you're gonna shoot at 288 millimeters, with a 1.4 converter, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing it. Really, the only thing you need there is from that 300 to 420 is gonna give you that extra reach, and anything else, you're just missing out on that 2.8 because you didn't actually need it. Also, I should mention, it's a pain in the ass to go ahead and put a 1.4 converter on and then take a 1.4 converter off when you don't need it. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I've been using for more than 12 years for my personal website because it's simple, easy, affordable, and I don't need to know coding. To get your 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Let's take a look at a photo in the outfield. Now, a lot of times you want to have a longer lens for something happening in the outfield. Like a 400 2.8 still wouldn't give me, it may zoom in just a little bit more on this guy in the outfield trying to catch the ball, but the 300 was okay. And for those people cropping, they're gonna be totally fine with it. For the people just posting it online, they're not making prints, they're putting it on Instagram, they're putting it in newspapers, then it's gonna be perfectly fine. It's not ideal, but it certainly does work and get the job done. Where I liked it is the fact that I could have Castellanos here hitting a home run. You can see the ball. Now, I wish it was a little tighter. It's a little far away for the 300. I wish it filled the frame a little bit more. But what I gain here is as he starts running, I'm able to zoom back. So I'm at 300, now I'm at 175, and then when he's rounding the bases, I bang back into 300, which is still a 2.8, and that's why you have that range of 100 to 300 is super versatile. Now, I should say it all depends on the place that you're shooting. Certain stadiums have different areas for you to photograph from. Like here in Philly, there's a place I can sit that they call inside third base, which is right next to the dugout and right in front of the batting circle. Having a 100 to 300 here was incredible. Like filling the frame with the pitcher. This is a great shot. At 4, if I had a 400 2.8, I then run into the possibility, which I've done before, of cutting off the foot after they land on it. I found that to be an issue with the 400. It was just a little long for there, but I get a shot like this. Then I'm able to get the guy in the on-deck circle at 100 millimeters. That's something I would need to pull out a 70 to 200 to do, and then grab the 400 2.8 if I wanted to switch and have those two cameras. But working inside this position, I'm able to get Schwarber hitting 181 millimeters. That looks great. I'm able to get this guy locked off at 300 millimeters. Remember the impossible shot? That was done with a 400 2.8. Well, in this case, it's a hell of a lot easier with the 300 millimeter because it's perfect for getting the guy swinging at home plate. And then, of course, you can have someone sliding in to home plate with that 100 millimeters for any plays that happen. So it is actually a versatile lens when it comes to baseball. I thought it might not have been. Now, here's another example of showing you it being a little short. We have a play at second base. You got Bohm sliding in. They actually called him safe at first, then they reviewed it, and he's out, and you can see that he's out. Because as we zoom in, we can see that the glove is hitting his calf, and his foot is not on the base. Thus why the umpire was like, bam! And he punched him out. That's how I used to punch people out when I umpired baseball. But yeah, so you could crop this. You could crop and go in on it. At least you have the image and you didn't cut anything off. So that is one of those examples. So at the end of the day, it actually was useful for baseball. You throw on that 1.4x converter from time to time, it might be even more useful. I wish it was built in, but that's beside the point, it's not. But where I thought this lens was gonna be fantastic was photographing soccer. Field sports, right? I thought it would be great for that. Could be good for lacrosse. I thought it was great for soccer because there's a lot of stuff that happens in front of the net. And when I'm using just the 70 to 200 to shoot soccer, it feels like you're too far away. You're not really getting much of the action. But where this came in handy, and I wish I had EVF recordings of this, was when a player was coming down the sideline. You watch as a player passes the ball, you're locking off, you're banging off shots on him, and normally if you stayed at 400 2.8 or 300 2.8, you wouldn't be able to track the player coming towards the end line to do a pass to the center. In this case, I just rolled my hand, zoomed from 300 to 100 or everywhere in between, and was able to get great shots of the players. Now, like I said earlier, the rain did not take away from any of the autofocus. It did not miss. Now, I will say I did have my Think Tank raincoat on. I had my Patagonia rain vest and jacket, as well as having the rain pants to be completely covered because it was raining the whole time. This is weather sealed, but you don't want to be in a deluge for 3 hours. That's why you invest the money in something like a Think Tank Hydrophobia version 3, which is what I used for this one. Now, let's look in front of the net. This is 153 millimeters of an owned goal. I wouldn't have gotten this with a 300 2.8 or a 400 2.8 because I would have never had the guy who's laying on the ground accidentally kicking it past his goalie and going into the net. And then the next shot, when we go through to that, we're at 170 millimeters, so filling the frame just a little bit more. It's the versatility that counts. You've got the player running after he scored the goal. Just look how we zoom in and we see all the raindrops, yet he is perfectly sharp. The Phillies pictures, the colors are incredible. The pictures with soccer, colors not as good, partly because the lighting is really terrible at Subaru Park, but also I'm at 5,000 ISO. The higher the ISO, the less vibrant the color is going to be. That's why when I was shooting the Phillies, it looks so damn good because one, it's sunlight, and two, the ISO is much lower. Now, one of the coolest photos that I got was at 100 millimeters. I would never have gotten this shot, even with the 70 to 200, it wouldn't have been great. But look at the spray of water coming off this guy's head after he headballs the ball. It's great. Would I like to have been a little tighter? Well, I could have been. I could have zoomed in, but you don't know where a lot of this action is going to happen when it's with soccer. That's why the versatility of the zoom is fantastic. 100 to 300 is absolutely fantastic. Let me jump in here and say, would you like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations? If you said yes, just look for this orange box over on FroKnowsPhoto.com, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm going to send you that guide for free. A couple more images from outside where I went and photographed. I was playing pickleball, so I took my camera out there to photograph my friends because I think this is going to be an incredible tennis lens. If you are photographing court sports like tennis, I don't know any other court sports. I guess pickleball is a court sport. They sort of do that professionally. That is where this lens is going to come in handy. This one, 200 millimeters. Next one, 280 millimeters. So absolutely incredible for tennis. I think it's going to be incredible for basketball. baseball. I think people that are shooting fashion shows are gonna like this if they're making a bunch of money. A photographer who does a lot of high school sports, if they sell a ton of images and they actually have a business and they can afford it, then this is going to be a nice option for them. But I know there's still a couple of tests you want to know about. One is the sniff test and the other is the wind tunnel test. Let's start with the wind tunnel test, Steven, and see if it passes. This is the toughest test in the world here. Didn't move, Steven. Didn't move. So I'm going to give that a fail because it didn't move. It failed the wind tunnel test, the most important test. So maybe if you were waiting to see if it passed it to buy it, well, it didn't. So maybe you don't buy it. But the next test, the sniff test. Let's smell it. Oh, it smells like the Philly Fanatic's tail feather. That's right. Oh, that Philly Fanatic. He's such a good character. He's so good. Nope, doesn't smell like Dollar Dog Night where they sell 8 billion of these things. Look, this is a $9,500 lens. Is it more expensive than a 300-2.8? The answer is yes. It's gonna be, if they had a 300-2.8, you're looking at 7-ish, $7,500-ish, $8,000. You're at $9,500 for this. The fact that Nikon's was $9,500 and a 120-300 and not even for mirrorless, this puts us in a good light. Expensive. $9,500. Versatile for sports shooters. Like I said, if you're gonna shoot softball, this is an amazing lens for shooting softball. If you're doing baseball, it might work in some situations and it might not work in others. If you're a news photographer, because I spoke to a bunch of them, you're looking at them saying they could have a 24-70 or a 24-105 and a 100-300 and cover everything they need to cover. Now, mind you, it is larger and you do have to carry it around, so that might be one of those issues, but it's an incredible lens. If I could get one, which I'm gonna try and get one from Canon, you see that money truck? Maybe I'll send the money truck back your way to get one of these. I could see having this in my arsenal. It's not for everybody. If you're never gonna spend $9,500, I mean, you have a 100-500 as a comparison. It's smaller except for when you zoom it out, but it's also a $3,000 lens versus a $9,500 lens. It's a 4.5 to 7.1. It's really not a lens that a lot of pro shooters are gonna take around because the 7.1 is not worthy when it comes to shooting at night. It's just not gonna happen, but you get 200 millimeters extra. Still not what I would personally do. Maybe those nature and wildlife photographers only wanna spend $3,000, they can get something like this. Does it replace the 70-200 2.8? And the answer is no. This is still a versatile and a very needed lens for a lot of shooters. It's just that those people that, if you're doing basketball, you might have a 24-70 or a 15-35 2.8 on one camera, and then you bring this up for players coming up the court or at the other end, it's gonna be fantastic. So, at the end of the day, it's an amazing lens. If you can afford it and you can justify it, absolutely pre-order and buy it. It's gonna maintain its value for a long time and you're gonna get a lot of great images out of it if you know what you're doing. Now here's a slideshow of a bunch of images that I captured throughout the day, testing this out in the real world, so please be sure to check this out. And there you have it, guys. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.